This is episode 274 of the Reel Me In, a movie podcast. On this week's episode, Chase and Joel will take a look at the newest film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Avengers Endgame, as well as going over some movie trailers and movie news that dropped throughout the week and commentate on them for you guys. All that and more on today's Reel Me In. What is going on, everybody, and welcome to Avengers Endgame weekend. I am one of your DJs on this cinematic quest that you've chosen to listen to this week, this day, whenever you're listening to this, to the Reel Me In, a movie podcast. I am Chase Lee, one of your co-hosts, and I'm actually going to spin it over to the co-host because he's going to MC this entire episode from the way he structured this episode and all that stuff. And, you know, I just want to kind of let him guide us along this adventure because this is going to be quite the discussion. So before I throw it over to the co-host, if you're new to the show, welcome. If you're a returning listener, welcome back. As stated up in the front, we go over some movie news and trailers and talk about the movies on said weekend that we record these things. But we have a little bit of a different kind of layout that we're going to do this week, and it might be for the better, it might be for the worse, but it's going to get you guys information right at the top, a little bit of a breather, and then get into some nitty-gritty details, just to kind of hype it up a little bit. But before I throw it over to co-host, just real quick, if you guys are listening to on Spreaker, CastBox, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you're getting this podcast, please like, share, and let people know this is your favorite movie podcast to listen to. Joel, it is time, my friend. We have been looking forward to this movie for quite a while, and just a little kind of history. I actually started this podcast a week after Thor: The Dark World, and I cannot believe it was that long ago. So, Joel, how are you doing this week, sir? And go ahead and take over this glorious episode in the way you have structured it.
I've been doing good this week. I've been just watching a bunch of stuff, leading up to Endgame, and a lot of like theory videos and stuff. I was engaged in the fandom. It was pretty fun, and stayed away from any sort of spoilers. Only read a few reviews in full from critics that I trust, not to give away more than they think they should, and so. Yeah, it's been a fun week, and coming off of the film festival, I've been lagging a bit just because of exhaustion from that week. But other than that, just working and playing around. Yes, so this is going to be a bit of a different episode. First, though, I wanted to ask, how have you been doing this week? Have you been basically in a fetal position, crying, waiting for Endgame? Did you just give up on all activities and just stared at your car until you could get into it and go to the theater? I'm just wondering, what was your week like?
So to answer the first question, possibly. To answer the second question, yes. See, the thing is, and you guys can roll your eyes all you want and be like, why do you like this stuff and why do you get so into it? But this is actually true. I'm not making this up. And I'm sure Joel feels like some type of anxiety when he's watching like one of his, favorite movies, or like when, he's got one of his franchises that are still ongoing in theaters and the new one comes out. But I was like legit in anxiety the entire week, and like my back was sweating when I got there on Thursday night. I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen to these characters that we've, grown up with. Like I was 18 years old when the first Iron Man came out. This is insanity, Joel, insanity. So yeah, I was in a complete like mental throwdown with myself because I'm like, okay, because once the week started, I was like, all right, I got 3 days to kind of like trudge along, work with, and everything. But I made it through. But yeah, definitely huge sweaty nerd vibe going on over here. I have Captain America socks, and also a Captain America shirt I wore. Yes, I am that person. And believe it or not, the premiere night was actually pretty cool, Joel. The Alamo Drafthouse is where I typically go for bigger movies that I see with like people, and then usually the other movies that Joel and I review for you guys. My fiance, we just go down the road to the Studio Movie Grill. But for the Alamo, they always do something like kind of crazy, right? And so when we got into the front lobby, they had a bunch of cosplayers that they hired for, you know, kids and pictures and stuff, and like that's fine. I mean, they do that with every Marvel movie, but the thing I really liked, and which was also kind of screwed up, was they had a whole table of all the fallen Avengers with like jars of dust, and they had their names on them, and they had an eye patch around Nick Fury's. The Wasp was like a little speck of dust. It was hilarious and heartfelt at the same time. And they also had Stan Lee's picture in the middle. So it was just really, really nice. And it's one of those weird things, Joel. Like, even if you don't like these movies or you just think they're okay, I get that film is subjective. Cool, you do you. But I think there is something kind of magical about seeing these films with like hardcore fans on opening night and just people that have been invested into it, people that get fully engaged while watching it, and you can hear their excitement and enthusiasm and fear and gasp and laughter, all that stuff throughout the audience. It's something that it doesn't come around often. It might come around when you have watched the Harry Potter movies or Lord of the Rings or Star Wars or any of those films, but it's kind of cool to be in the kind of like in the thick of it. I know you saw it Friday morning and stuff, but
yeah.
So I'm sure that was a kind of a different vibe than opening night. But I mean, how was it? Friday night, was it still packed?
Saturday morning Friday morning it was pretty full.
Wow.
It wasn't as big of a theater as usual. I
Right.
saw it in one of the smaller theaters in AMC here. The AMC that I go to is positioned on the top of a mall, but it still has 24 theaters screens. So I saw it in one of the small ones that was holding the movie. So it was pretty full, but that's not really. I mean, there just weren't very many people just because of the size of the theater. It was interesting though in terms of engagement with the movie. Um, it was weird. So there weren't as many cheering noises that I heard. Now I was pretty engaged with the movie, so I wasn't quite paying attention to everything else, but because I didn't want to miss anything. But I feel like until the third act, there wasn't much like verbal engagement with the audience. Not that they were like talking and seemingly bored. It was almost like a rapt silence, but there wasn't any sort of like OMG cheering stuff until the third act. And so it was weird. It was not like my experience with Infinity War, but I saw Infinity War on opening night. So I don't know. I had to work on Thursday, and then I didn't really want to do a 3-hour movie after a closing shift because that's a lot. I would have gotten out of the theater around 2 o'clock, and I would have been useless yesterday. So I didn't want to do that. But maybe I would have had a more like a less surprising trip to the theater than if I'd gone Thursday night. But it was a 9 a.m. show. Probably people were still waking up, or maybe had seen it already. Because I know that I have a couple of friends who do this. They'll see, especially with the Avengers team up movies, they'll see it like 5 times opening weekend because they're just so into it, So a friend of mine, for instance, saw Infinity War Thursday night last year, and then he got up, saw it again, and then saw it again. So he saw it again on Friday morning. Then he saw it again on Friday night. So that's just how he is. And then I think he saw it once more on Sunday or something like that. And I think that he's already seen it, this one, 3 times as well. So
I have to tell people I'm not that crazy. I will typically see a movie twice in theaters, and it's not because I don't want to see it 3 times. It's because, one, Joel and I have like a set schedule that we have to hit every single week. I have other movies to watch, and then 2, I would rather just save my money and wait until I get like the Blu-ray so I can just watch it over and over and over again, if that makes any sense. So I usually do 2 times and I'm done, and that's for every movie, by the way.
I can't wait to get this one on 4K because
my God.
I won't have time to see it again in theaters. It's too long. I mean, it doesn't feel long, and we'll get into that, but literally, it's too long. Uh,
Oh, so
it is.
basically, Joel just he just looked down upon everyone that's seen it twice. So I'm seeing it twice today, and he just said, I heard it in his voice. He was like, "I'm not going to see it twice because it's too long." All
I
the
am
other people that are
better.
seeing
I
it
am
twice,
better than all of
I'm
you. I'm
telling you,
kidding.
Joel has this like weird superiority complex. It's impressive. Like it's kind of oblivious, but he does what he does.
Oh
Joel,
boy.
that's a great segue to just kind of jump into it, right?
Right. So here's basically we didn't really have to worry about this so much last year with Infinity War. There were certainly things to hide, but there was a lot of really straightforward story there. This movie, almost all of it, is a surprise. So here's what I decided to do. Um, Instead of us talking about it at the end of the episode and then giving you a 5 second break to turn off the episode, which is what we generally try to do if there's major spoilers. I decided that we would go ahead and review the movie from a spoiler-free perspective right now before we get into any sort of news. So y'all are going to hear our general thoughts, and I'll get into what I think is a spoiler here in a second, by the way. I'm not going to just not say anything about what the movie's about. But there's a certain point at which, yeah, we gotta save that for or save specifics of it for the spoiler zone, and that spoiler zone will come after our news and trailer segments. So yeah, I mean it's pretty much like let's get straight into it. This is Avengers Endgame. It's the 22nd movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, the film picks up immediately as the snap is occurring with an emotional prologue involving Hawkeye, Jeremy Renner's character, and the place in which he finds himself. I won't give anything else away about that, but I will say that beyond there, it picks up about 22 days later. 22. With Tony Stark, played by Robert Downey Jr., and Nebula, the daughter of Thanos, played by Karen Gillan, adrift in space. Meanwhile, on Earth, the remaining Avengers that were left on the Wakandan battlefield, including Captain America, Thor, Hulk, and Black Widow, are all trying to account for the missing. They are called the Vanished, and they are at the Avengers headquarters in New York. Captain Marvel comes to save Tony and Nebula from their certain demise in space, returns them to Earth, where they also find War Machine, played by Don Cheadle, and Rocket, voiced by Bradley Cooper. And they conspire a plan to steal the Infinity Stones back from Thanos. Once finding out that world governments are in disarray around Earth, natural disasters are happening all across the universe, and so they go to his hiding place, which is a farm planet on the other end of the universe, which they're guided there by Nebula, who knew about that plan, and seemingly the plan works. Thanos is defeated, and the plot flashes forward by 5 years. So, people are probably going to be up in arms right now. They're probably going to be like, what? In that exact tone and pitch of voice. For me, like, pointing out the catharsis of the series' big bad villain demise. However, I'm just going to remind people that this movie is 3 hours, and what I've just told you happens within 20 minutes. So there's a lot of movie left, and all I will say is that Ant-Man returns from his trip to the quantum realm with a ludicrous plan to set everything right. And that is all I'm going to say about the plot of this movie. So, Chase, I want us to duck around what we can right now. I want us to kind of just go with general stuff because there's a lot of stuff to talk about in our spoiler zone. It's kind of hard, though, and I think that you'll agree with me on this, to talk about this movie in a spoiler-free zone, particularly with regards to its quality, just because there's so much about the movie's quality that's directly tied to what happens after this early defeat. So I'm going to give it over to you. This is going to be tough, but I want you to not really give anything away. but I want you to give the short version of your review. Go ahead, sir.
Right, and just for the people out there that to just go off of what you said, if you are freaking out that Joel revealed all that, I approved of that. I was okay with that because he is correct. It is surprising to see that in theaters, but that kind of gives you the context of the story. And there's just so much that happens that honestly doesn't make a difference in terms of your experience. Everything that we discuss from that point on in the spoiler zone, that will determine your experience. But I approve that. So if we lost people, I apologize. It's been a fun ride. But
I just want to also remind people too, and this is going to be probably people are going to say that this is condescending, and I'm not trying to be condescending. I'm just trying to give you all truth. And I said this whenever we reviewed Blade Runner 2049 and revealed that Ryan Gosling's character is a replicant. A spoiler is not just what you don't want to know. A spoiler is something that removes the experience from you, and also reveals information that you do not need to know before seeing the movie. So in order to understand and comprehend the plot after the 20-minute mark, after it flashes forward and 5 years into the future, first of all, you need to know why it flashes forward 5 years in the future. And you need to understand that character motivations and all of that, it's really important to know the fact that they defeat him so early on. And so anyway, I just wanted to say that again. Once again, spoiler has basically been widened way too much to mean things about the plot. And that is not what they are. They are things that are intentionally hidden about the plot. So
right, and I think most of the people that listen to this podcast, they'll probably have either seen the movie anyways, or
Yep.
They know that we're not going to spoil like important stuff for them. So if you stuck around, God bless you. But but if you have left and that angered you, I apologize. I did approve that, but I do think it's important to the context of what Joel said with like the character growth for certain people that we've been kind of following for 10 plus years. It's kind of incredible that even after all that time, you can still find stuff to mine out of their character and further them even more than they already are. So, yes. So, Avengers Endgame. It is here. We're going to talk about it. And then, of course, go into way more depth after we give you guys a break in the middle. But, like going into it, I was already hyped out. I told you guys I was sweating. My back was sweating like a person that was filing their taxes for their first time. I was nervous. I didn't know what I was doing with my life. I have become invested, time, money, and just mental stability for a third of my life into this franchise. And so there's a lot riding on this movie. How is it going to end? Is it going to wrap everything up in a satisfying way? Is it going to be a lot of fan service? Is it going to be, is it going to take you in directions you never thought it would go? I mean, there was many questions going into it, and especially given that we're having another Marvel movie in 2 more months, a lot of stuff that we have questions about. And this is before I'm seeing it twice. So I'm seeing it later on tonight, and usually with stuff like this, I would like to see it twice. I cannot squeeze in 2 times before we recorded this thing. That's not a big deal. But I did sit on this. This was not one of those movies I would want to just blurt out on social media 5 minutes after I got out of the theater, like, this is the best thing I've ever seen. No. I told people that asked me at work on Friday, I said, they asked, what'd you think of it? I said, I liked it a lot, but I do need to process a lot of stuff that happens, because this is something that needs to needs to kind of marinate on and really Joel knows what's happening. There's dogs barking in the background.
Yes.
Sorry. You have to concentrate a little bit hard. Sorry. So yeah, a lot to unpack to where I felt more comfortable with waiting until the following morning before I really kind of established a grade, a feeling for it, and an overall analyzation in terms of, because there's a lot of moments that happen. I thought about certain ones and how it correlates them back to the characters when they started. Like, I thought about a bunch of different things. But I think what I've come to the conclusion for on my first viewing and thinking about it is I like this movie a lot, and I would compare it to the same impact as Infinity War. It's on a completely different scale, but same impact. But I do like it a little bit more just because I was kind of impressed with the amount that they were able to juggle, the amount of growth that each of these characters had, the kind of surprise performances from everybody. The fact that these people can play these roles for many years and impress me, and then watch another movie 22 films in and impress me even more and take their performances to the next level, that's like the type of dedication that I love seeing in actors and actresses. Typically in franchises, people get tired and they don't really give an effort. I really felt everything that was coming across from everyone in this movie. And it's quite an achievement in this genre for sure. A couple things I didn't really care for, but it's not enough to sink a 3-hour-long movie for me. Just to kind of start off at the top with the Russo brothers, these guys are incredible. When they first came on with Winter Soldier, they did a spy thriller. When they did Civil War, they did Avengers 2.5, but they handled it so well. And then, of course, Infinity War, and then Endgame, and then, of course, you have Joel, who are the screenwriters? Marcus McFeely?
Yeah, Christopher Marcus, Stephen McFeely.
Right.
Yeah.
And so these two gentlemen have been writing a slew of Marvel movies up until this point. These guys know how to navigate these characters. These guys know how to navigate and ping pong off of 20 situations in a movie while it not really seeming cluttered and appear seamless. And that also has to do with the editing. This is quite an achievement in editing, regardless of what you think of the movie. I think it is a testament to have a movie that is 3 hours long feel like it was an hour and a half. Like, it was kind of impressive that I sat there, and I didn't tell Joel this, but I'll tell you guys this. We had a power outage 20 minutes into the movie, which is actually where Joel stopped talking about the plot. And the lights came up, and we're like, what's happening? Are they going to tell us to go? Are we getting a refund? What's happening? It came back on 20 minutes later, but I didn't go to the bathroom or whatever, so I actually sat on my seat longer than the movie. But that's just a testament to the pace and the flow and the structure of the film. I actually think the whole 3-hour structure is necessary. I was a little skeptical going in. As much as I'd like to tell you guys from the fanboy side of me, I would love to see 5 hours of this movie. I also realize that pacing is important, and if there's stuff that can be taken out, you need to take it out. There could be one scene that is maybe questionable in the film. Mark actually pointed out let's just say the Hawkeye scene in a different part of the world. If you remove that, it's probably not a huge deal, but I didn't mind it so much being in there, and I thought everything from start to finish I thought was necessary. So speaking of the pacing and the structure and the kind of load that the Russo brothers were taking on with this project, I got to tell you, this is completely different than Infinity War. This is something unexpected because the first couple hours, well, I would actually say it's broken up into 3 distinct hours and acts. The first hour is straight up drama, and I never would have thought we would focus so much on grief and guilt and just the weight of what happened with the snap on their shoulders like that and what it does to them, knowing that there are specific people gone in their lives, or it may be specific people's faults, or they think it's their fault. There was so much pathos kind of bouncing back and forth, particularly within like Iron Man, Black Widow, Hawkeye. Those are 3 that, Nebula too. Those are some of the ones that stuck out, but everyone had something on their shoulders, something that was weighing them down. And the drama in the first hour was kind of shocking in like the best way possible. And I'll touch upon, actually, screw it, Joel. I'm going to do it hour by hour. The first hour, drama related, very heavy on the emotional front, really great pace. It's very, like melancholy. It's very just somber, but I love that though. I love that they're dealing with the aftermath of this snap. It's weighing on them, and it was really interesting to see them written like that. And we get to see just how much it affected them, and the performances are outstanding in this first hour for sure. Scarlett Johansson's always been great, not only in this movie but in other movies. She's probably the best thing she has ever portrayed as Black Widow in this movie. Robert Downey Jr. in what Joel was describing to you in the first opening bit, phenomenal. Like, for a guy that's been doing this role for 11 years now, I didn't think he can get any better. And believe it or not, ever since he's been under the Russo brothers' direction, he's actually given the best performances. The first time I was ever struck by him in a very like, oh wow, this is him, was Civil War. I've always liked him up until that point, but there wasn't as much. He
added layers of
right. It was layers, and there was just a lot of bite to him in Civil War with all the trauma that he was dealing with. It was great, and so he does a fantastic job. And of course, Chris Evans is always great. Paul Rudd makes an unexpected kind of emotional pivot in the very beginning with you know what scene I'm talking about. It got me. Because Paul Rudd is also a great dramatic actor, if people didn't know. So he sold that scene. Once again, first hour, a lot of characters dealing with the turmoil that that's happened.
Two kinds of turmoil. There isn't just the snap or the decimation, as they're trying to get us to call it.
It's the inner character turmoil too.
Well, it's also the fact that they defeated Thanos, but the universe is saying, "Yeah, you killed him, but what about your actual problem?"
Yeah, it's like, what are you actually going to do about this? And they don't know what to do. Like, they're sitting there. They sit there for 5 years, and they're just like, guys, some of them are on the verge of leaving everyone and going and living in caves. Mm-hmm. Like, they want to be isolated. They're kind of shutting themselves out to people. And it's just, it's fantastic stuff. And there's even a scene in the very beginning. It's kind of like a support group. And that support group, one, was kind of shocking because you don't really see that much in like superhero films, but it was dealing with what people were going through with the snap, like normal people, not just superheroes, like what they were going through. So we got kind of their perspective. We got Captain America's perspective, and just what he's been searching for in his life. It's just that scene was kind of like what is like the center point of that entire first hour, and it's really great stuff. The second hour, completely different. There's drama to be had for sure. And a lot of it has to do with certain characters meeting certain other characters that they may or may not be related to. Once again, we're dodging around a lot of stuff, but we'll talk about it in the spoiler section. That was really nice to see. A lot of these superheroes that we have come to love, we think that they're gods, they're superior to everyone. It's like, no, they're actually like fragile people, and there's a lot going on underneath. And when they meet these specific people in the second hour, it's like a fun heist type of film. Almost reminds me of like Ant-Man. But when you're dealing with, let's just say the quantum realm, you're going from place to place, you're going to run into other people. And you're not supposed to like really do anything to them. You're not really supposed to talk to them, but you can't really help it because these are people that you're connected to. And it was those type of moments that really made that second hour sing even more. But on top of all that, some of the visual
And
gags.
trust me, folks, we'll get into
Yeah,
more of that in the
we'll get
the
into way
spoiler
more
zone.
of that. But the visual gags were hilarious in the second hour. You're dealing a lot with let's just say Back to the Future-esque type of storytelling, and so a lot of it is kind of bouncing between different locations, and it was just really, it was not only entertaining to see, but it was also just great knowing that you've seen those movies, you're seeing it from a different perspective now, and it was a lot of fun to witness. So the second hour, for sure, great stuff, and it actually ends on a pretty devastating thing that I actually didn't think was going to happen. I actually thought the opposite was going to happen, but we'll get into that in the spoiler section. So the second hour is done. So the third hour, straight up carnage. It's just nothing but all out war. I won't, once again, we'll go into detail, but that was a well edited, well shot, well choreographed sequence. The whole thing about it was just, it was kind of masterful to watch. And it even had hints of cinematography from like Thor Ragnarok when Valkyrie was like fighting Hela and it looked like oil paintings. There were several shots like that that kind of took my breath away. And I was like, wow, I'm typically not impressed with like, superhero films in terms like this type of scale.
Did you see it in 3D?
No, I didn't.
Okay, we'll get into that.
Right.
I got to see it again and not in 3D. Let's just say that.
Oh, yeah, that probably did it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a really enthralling sequence. It's something that it gets your motor running. It just strikes that energy as you're watching it, but it also has a lot of weight to it because a lot of stuff does happen in terms of characters making specific decisions or even following through with Doctor Strange's prediction. There's a lot going on, but it doesn't feel too busy to me. Sure, some characters are sidelined. That's totally fine. That doesn't really bother me because they weren't pivotal to the entire like story anyways. It was just mainly for, that battle's sake, so to speak. But, yeah, it was a really exciting sequence. It was just fun to watch. Of course, Thanos has great dialogue. Josh Brolin is the modern Darth Vader. I will stand by that. I think Thanos will go down in history as one of the best. And we'll get into our spoiler section, but I actually think when they fight Thanos at the end, the way I can word it is I think that state of Thanos was more or is more dangerous than what we saw in Infinity War. And I'll explain a little bit in the spoiler section. But when they were fighting Thanos, in this movie, like I just felt like there was a bit more danger and a little bit more unpredictability to him. Once again, we'll explain, but that made it more threatening and it made the stakes even higher for these characters to kind of go after him and see if they could take him down. And of course, the after the third hour, we have about 10 minutes of kind of wrap up, and I will say it's quite perfect. In terms of how they wrap up certain characters, where they might push other characters in specific directions. I thought everything was handled very well. I told Joel this last night.
I will just say the denouement here, the final 10 minutes or so, reminded me in terms of how they cut it,
right,
how the shots move, how the scenes move, of the final few minutes of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2.
I agree.
After Voldemort's defeat, and again, we're towing the line of spoilers here, but we're not giving anything away,
right?
And I'm amazed by it.
But that's why I wanted to. I think it's actually pretty safe to divide them up into like sections because that's how the movie is. But it doesn't feel like separate movies. It feels like one cohesive thing. But you're getting like specific sections that are distinctly different. But I kind of like that. It just it makes the thing more epic than it already is. But the last final bits, it's just... I don't like to use this word often. It's beautiful. It really is. I mean, I got misty-eyed, not going to lie. A lot of things I thought would happen. A lot of things I didn't think would happen. And that's what the kind of unpredictability kind of came from. I had no idea what they were going to do in the last final... section of this film, but I think from the last like few minutes till the end of the credits, I just thought, you know what, that was a nice ending. And to be quite frank with you, as much as I love this genre, if they were to end the Marvel Cinematic Universe today, I would not be sad. I would be fine with where they leave it. But of course, we got Spider-Man: Far From Home, so that's not really a thing.
And then beyond that, who knows what we have?
Right. So Joel and I are going to have no sleep thinking about theories. But thank you, Marvel. And just a couple negatives, or a couple of spots where I didn't really particularly care for. Some of the humor, it's hit and miss for me sometimes. It's Marvel at this point. I understand. Like I don't laugh at every single thing they throw at me. So there is that. And then 2, I have a lot of questions about the time travel thing. I don't think that's a spoiler. That's it's Ant-Man. That's all I'm gonna say. I have just a couple things about that, and it's regarding the future and how they're going to. Well, we'll get to it, but there's a lot to take in. It is an epic movie for 3 hours. It does not feel like it. There's a lot of moving parts, but I think it all works. A lot of stuff that happens, I do think is earned. I don't think anything is mishandled. I think for the most part, I think what they set out to do, I think they did in spades. And I think one last thing before I give a grade. The score is phenomenal. It is that, Infinity War, and probably the first Avengers. So basically the Avengers films have some of the best music and scoring of any Marvel film. It takes that epic kind of intensity and throws it up another notch, and you're like, how is this score so good? It's sweeping, it's romantic sometimes, it's action forward. It's really kind of great to listen to. So I think I gave Infinity War an A. I think I'm going to stick with that grade for now until I see it again. But I think even with some of the missteps I might have, or some of the things I didn't really care for, or some of the stuff that I'm curious to see how they're going to go with it. I think it's like a 95 to 5 split, where like I think 95% of the time this movie works, and like there might be like a 5% gap where stuff may not flow for me, but it's so overwhelmingly positive. I don't know how you can go below an A minus. And I'm talking about for me. I'm just speaking internally. I don't know how I can go below an A minus, but I think there's enough there to where, as a person that has been following this storyline for 11 years, I'm pretty satisfied. And I cannot wait until it comes out in Blu-ray. Joel and I we're going to watch Infinity War and Endgame back to back, and we'll probably analyze it even further. And it will be a great double feature. So I think I'm comfortable with giving Endgame an A.
And so am I.
Right.
I gave Infinity War an A as well. There's a lot of pressure on this movie. It's a third sequel to the Avengers, but it's also a direct continuation of all those mid-credit scenes and the background of the plots of the solo adventures like Guardians of the Galaxy, stuff that involved Thanos, basically. It's also an examination of the aftermath of the events of Infinity War, but it's also a celebration of the series until now. So that's a lot of stuff. And because of the scope of it, I think that it's pretty easy to misstep, dislodge some piece, and the whole construction comes down. That's pretty much what could happen here. And I think that Marcus and McFeely and the Russos all pretty much don't allow that to happen. And I think that that's probably the best gift that they could give us. It's been a bumpy road here. There are movies that I like more than others. Weirdly enough, recently I made a major turnaround on Age of Ultron, which I don't know what happened there. But anyway, I like that one a lot more now.
Age of Ultron, by the way, and I'm not going to, don't even ask me to rank all 4 of them, because they're all 4, I think, great in their own regard. But Age of Ultron is very underrated. People just poo-poo on that movie for no reason.
including me in 2015.
Right.
And probably a couple times since then. But I had a major turnaround on that. I don't know why. maybe it was in succession watching it with Avengers. Maybe after so many other movies, it just kind of comes across as a bit bloated. But anyway, I didn't find that this time whenever I watched it before this. Um, and yeah, so it's been a bumpy road, but this is one of the best movies in the universe. In terms of ranking the Avengers movies, I'd say it's on par with Infinity War. I don't know if it's better or worse. I think that it's right there, and
I agree.
so I also don't think that it's the best film in the universe. I'm over the course of several viewings, I'm more and more a fan of Thor Ragnarok as I get farther away from it and watch it more.
You and I are weird because like you would go for Thor Ragnarok. I would still say my favorite one, just overall, is probably Civil War.
Okay, yeah, well, that's also a good one. I mean,
Right.
Phase 3 has been just pretty much one great blockbuster after another, and we can get into the levels of that some other time. But I've really been impressed by all of them, and they have some soft lobs like Ant-Man and the Wasp, but still, the heavy hitters have heavily hit.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's just it's a great piece of epic storytelling, and it juggles all of its pieces really well. You have, like you said, it's really kind of split into three parts where for a while it's examining the aftermath. Then they need to, kind of hunker down and get a plan going. And when they do that, it's one of the funniest movies in the universe. I'll just say that. There's not just doom and gloom here, which it could have been. It could have been way over serious, and it could have been something like Justice League or whatever, where it was just this very self-serious plot about some generic thing happening, and a lot of
Well, and like even in
MacGuffins.
the second hour with their quote unquote plan, there's still not like there's not like serious moments, but there's tender moments, and there's like,
Right.
really
Yeah,
like
yeah.
very.
I just wanted to say
Yeah.
it's one of the funniest movies in the universe,
Right,
but
right.
not without. There's a couple of scenes that really hit hard there.
Right.
Just because of what they're doing, the times that they're going to, and the movies that end up being important. Let's just say that.
And they even make fun of that, by the way. They make fun of their previous movies.
And
It's great.
that's the other thing, and we'll get into this more in depth. Actually, I'm going to save that thought for the end, but
Right.
I do like how they handle the franchise, not just the universe, in those
Right.
sequences. And we'll get into that more later on. But then you have this final hour or so of, all the final showdown, the major conflict being pretty pretty complicated. We'll get to that later.
It's got one of my favorite shots in the entire universe.
Okay.
I think you know which one I'm talking about, but I might
maybe so. There's a lot here, but
Right.
but yeah, the final. I mean, again, I feel like they could have picked maybe a lighter color palette. That's one major problem I have with the final battle. But
It's fair enough.
even in 2D, I'm just saying, like, set it in a different part of the day or something like that.
Do you think like that color palette is slightly okay just because they kind of set up that color palette for the jump ahead in time? Like the kind of a post-apocalyptic look to it?
Maybe, but still makes stuff hard to see.
Right.
If you had that in a regular... Again, I saw it in 3D, which darkens everything by...
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah, I didn't... the 8 o'clock a.m. show was weirdly almost full, so I didn't want to pick one that was almost full, and it ended up my mom went with me, and I don't know if we would have been able to secure tickets, and anyway, it was a last-minute thing that she went with me, so anyway, yeah, it's amazing how well they juggle everything here, and how easily it could have all just gone to crap, but it doesn't, and that's kind of a testament to the series, to the best movies in the series that juggle this much and don't let it get don't let it kind of overtake them. It almost makes you want every other one of the big team up movies to be 3 hours, because it almost felt like with some of the other team up movies like Avengers Age of Ultron, Civil War. There was a lot going on, and maybe they didn't quite juggle every single, subplot really well, but here they do. And they give everybody pretty much, I mean, other than these characters that aren't completely central to the plot, they give the central characters pretty much everybody here their moment to shine, and multiple ones in some cases. And yeah, I mean, just again, that's great. The ending is just very very touching, and I love how well it was constructed. I love the unexpected directions that it goes in, and the sense of humor that it has about itself is very important, because you don't want to overload with a bunch of doom and gloom and turn people away from it. It really works, and yeah, I mean, I'm with you. It's an A. The performances, it's weird. This is the first movie in a while that I felt like it might be beside the point to point out specific performances that work really well. Certainly, there are examples of it. I think that Downey's great. I think that Evans is great. I think Hemsworth is great. All of the main three, kind of the central three, are great. Ruffalo has a lot of fun. We'll get into why later on. He has a lot of fun. There's Paul Rudd is great. Basically everybody's great. And
right. But there's certain moments that like just make them stand out and amongst this like huge crowd, and that's what I really appreciated.
So for instance, I mean, almost all of them involve reunions of some sort.
Right.
Interestingly enough, I mean, maybe not Johansson. There's some great moments that she has when she's just physically exhausted, sitting at a desk or a table or whatever, that I loved, enjoying a meal. You know what I'm talking about. So yes. That's a great moment for her. Everybody else gets these moments of like reunion that are pretty amazing. And yeah, I won't really point out who, except for to say that Paul Rudd's best moment is a reunion of sorts, and near the beginning. So yeah, I really liked it, and I'm giving it an A. I think it's also the best when it's personal, even more. This is actually how Josh Larson and Adam Kempenaar over at Film Spotting put it. It's best when it's personal, even more so than when it's planetary.
Right.
Where you have this big conflict that leads to the final showdown that's like 35 minutes long or something, and you get a big battle. Yeah, great stuff. Really well handled, despite the color palette. As an action scene, it works like gangbusters. But the best moments in this movie are personal. They are, and I'm just going to say these phrases. Nobody's going to know what I'm talking about. Fatherly embrace, and a son seeking reassurance from his mother. So those are my favorite moments in this movie, the ones that really got me teared up. And another one, but we'll have to get to that later on. So yeah, it's just, as I've already written my review. I'm handling my review sort of like what we're doing now. I've written my spoiler-free review. Sometime next week, I'm gonna fill in all the spoiler stuff, and it's gonna be much longer. But the current last sentence of my review is what I'm going to leave off with, and then we'll get into some news and trailers. And I'm just going to say that it's a reminder, the fact that this movie has the best moments in their personal is a reminder that beneath all the fireworks, the character of these heroes was at the center of their universe. It was always about characters. It wasn't primarily about these stones or the MacGuffin or the big gigantic plot. I mean, it was about that, but it really wasn't about that, if you know what I mean. It was always about what would happen when these characters reached the end of the line. And I think that even in the biggest moments, you have the small moments. Even within that final battle, there's some funny moments, there's some touching moments, there's some decisive moments, there's some shocking realization moments. It's a great piece of work, and I think it's fantastic, and I love how it all turned out, for sure. So we'll get into some of the spoilers a little later on. I'm also an A. Chase is an A. So go see it. Uh, Chase, lead us into the trailers for the week, sir.
Oh man, some good stuff indeed. So amongst the assault in theaters that is Avengers Endgame, we did have trailers that were brave enough to drop online. A lot of them being Netflix titles. I don't really want to cover those anymore unless they're like high profile, like The Irishman or something. Other than that, especially to cut time on this episode, I gotta just do the kind of big ones for right now. But the three big ones to me that dropped while we were on our hiatus a little bit because we didn't do any trailers last week. The first one is Child's Play. This one comes out in June 21st to be exact. It is the counter-programming to Toy Story 4. How horrific is that? And probably the most genius producer move I've ever seen. It's a baller move, by the way. A baller move to be like, hey, for your G-rated kids film about toys, we're going to have an R-rated film about a killer doll. What do you got, Disney? So I appreciate that snarkiness. If you guys have never seen the Child's Play movies, it is about this little boy, Andy, and his mother. He wants this good guy doll, kind of like, in Jingle All the Way, how everyone was seeking the Turbo Man doll. Everyone wants a good guy doll in some way, shape, or form. It is a character that's in a TV show. Think of something like Bob the Builder or something. So they build it into a toy, and of course he wants it for his birthday. She gets it for his birthday, but little does he know, there was a serial killer that possessed and transferred his soul into the doll, and his name was Charles Lee Ray, but he goes by Chucky. That's what his thugs and friends called him. So Chucky's soul is in this good guy doll. He gets into Andy's house and he wreaks havoc, and he tries to slash and slice and dice as one slasher film would. So that is the remake. The original one came out in 1988, 2 years shy before my existence. I love the Chucky films. The first three play it straight as a horror film. And then from 4 onward, they've been more embracing the horror comedy spin because Brad Dourif is a very funny dude when he is in the Chucky persona. So this is the first full trailer that we got. They released a teaser trailer a while back. This full trailer is fine. I'm still excited to see it because it is from the producers of the new It movie. I love this franchise. Give it to me. I'm going to watch it regardless. But if you're talking to me in terms of how the trailer flow, how does Aubrey Plaza look, how does Brian Tyree Henry look, they look fine. I got to see it more in context. And they're still trying to hide Chucky quite a bit in terms of what he looks like, what he sounds like. Mark Hamill did have one line at the end of the trailer. I think it was just a laugh. So I take that back. It wasn't even a line. It was just a noise that came out of his mouth. It sounds like Chucky. It's fine. But Entertainment Weekly decided to drop a photo of what Chucky looks like. He looks like if the Ken doll was a psychopath. He has this weird porcelain, clean plastic look to him. When he scrunches up his eyes and his eyebrows, he looks like the Critters from the Critters movie. It is one of the most bizarre looks I have seen for a slasher movie. The original Chucky was terrifying. And as the movies progressed, he would get scars on his face and stitches, and it made him look menacing. This looks like I said, if the Ken doll grew up to be a giant psychopathic baby in overalls. It looks so strange. Other than that, the trailer is fine. I will have to see it in context, but that's all I got for you. I'm still looking forward to it. I think it's pretty ballsy to be counter-programming against another film for children about kids' toys. Great stuff, but the trailer overall just kind of
much respect to the projectionist who quote unquote accidentally plays Child's Play instead of Toy Story 4.
I mean, listen, you're probably going to get in trouble, but Joel and I will be respectively clapping for you over here in the distance. So
fun little fact about the release of the original Child's Play. So I was originally supposed to be born on November 9th, 1989, which was the day that the Berlin Wall came down. Um, I ended up coming out a week early on November 2nd. This movie opened on November 9th, 1988. So it's almost exactly a year older than me.
So basically, what Joel's saying, if he was born on the theatrical release of Child's Play, then that would be his favorite movie of all time. That's just how that works. So if you're born on the day a movie comes out, I mean, you have to like it, even if you hate it. So, you know, yeah, so that movie is coming out June 21st. Another movie coming out October 4th from Paramount is Gemini Man from director Ang Lee, who... I guess his last one was Life of Pi, where he won the Oscar for best director.
He did Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk.
Oh, right, well. But no one remembers that.
He's barely directed anything this decade, though. So
right,
okay.
Yeah, Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk did not do well because they experimented with 60 frames per second with that movie. So, geez,
it looked weird, but it was a pretty good movie.
Yeah, it looked weird. I didn't see it, but you know. So he made that one. I apologize, I totally forgot. But his last notable one was Life of Pi, where he did win Best Director. So now he's coming in full swing, seeing if he can kind of tap into a more sci-fi drama. With Gemini Man, this one stars Will Smith. He is he's a hitman, and there's someone coming after him. He doesn't know what's happening, and then we realize that it's actually a younger version of him. And we don't really know much of how and the why and the who and the where, but there is a lot of scenes involving young Will Smith and Clive Owen, and young Will Smith is just like, you made me out of him 25 years ago. That's about as far as we got into the plot, because they're going to... I suspect there's going to be some type of twist or some type of revelation that they're going to keep close to the vest. That's respectable, cool. But in terms of how it looks... I think it looks pretty great. The action looks really kind of really grounded and kind of visceral. Like every single time, like when a bike would flip up in the air, like someone would get hit or punched, like I felt it. I felt the bones of their body, like, you know, punch my body. Like I felt that. So that's really great on that standpoint, because typically action films and big Hollywood movies are a little lackluster. And then the drama actually surprised me. There's a couple scenes in the trailer where young Will Smith is breaking down. There's a lot of tears in his eyes. There's a lot of conviction. And I felt that. I was just like, oh, cool. I thought this was going to be some throwaway sci-fi film. But it seems like everyone's giving it their all. And, you know, director Ang Lee, you know, he's done a lot of great films in his career. You know, we don't want to put Hulk on that resume. But I think for the most part, he just cranks out, you know, pretty great movies for the most part. So, yeah, believe it or not, I'm actually looking forward to it. And I think coming out October 4th is a pretty good release strategy, because I think given the fact that Will Smith is giving a lot of drama in this trailer, and then, of course, they put Academy Award nominee Will Smith in the trailer, I think Paramount's going to try to push it. So, you know, cool. I hope it's a great movie, but it looks interesting. I'll just say that.
I'm very excited for the sequel to Looper.
right. It's basically Looper Light.
And hey man, Ang Lee's Hulk is a great movie. So
sure.
Shut your mouth, sir.
So Joel, can we have another podcast episode in depth on the naked Eric Bana scene with the alien dogs?
Sure, it's great. It's a great scene. So sure,
let's dissect that. No, I just, to be honest with you, I've seen that Hulk movie twice. I haven't cared for it either way. But hey. We're here. We're here now.
You're fired, Chase. All right.
Yeah, whatever. Most people do. And the last film I am looking forward to, and this is the one I've been hearing about ever since the Russo brothers have been super successful with their Avengers films and Captain America films. And this one is 21 Bridges. Now, a lot of people are going to get this confused. They are not directing this. They are not even writing this. They are strictly producers. So it is written and directed by different people. I just want people to know that, because a lot of people are, especially when I went to work, they're like, man, that 21 Bridges directed by the guys that did Infinity War. It's like, no, they produced it, but I am glad they produced it, because they're getting their name behind smaller projects and really pushing them forward to give those movies love too. This one, 21 Bridges, is about a disgraced detective in the NYPD, and he is given a shot of redemption. The one thing I really like about this trailer is that the main character is played by Chadwick Boseman. So once again, worked with the Russo brothers and stuff. That's where they got to talking. And so they're like, hey, we're producing this film. Like, you want to be the lead type of deal. I like it because we don't see a lot of films like this dealing with detectives or officers that deal with a black lead, which is exciting. And, Chadwick Boseman is he's one of those actors that's really kind of great in everything. But the problem is all of his movies pre-Black Panther are overshadowed. And so I'm really hoping, and Scott Mendelson, who's a writer at Forbes, he brought this up. He said if 10% of Black Panther's audience will go see 21 Bridges to support him, this movie would do bananas business. And so that's a fact, though. And I really hope this does well. And it's not just because I want it to do well because Chadwick Boseman's in it and he's talented, but the movie actually looks really great. I love anything that has to do with corrupt cops or cops trying to fight the system. I love any of those type of movies. I'm a sucker for those for that subgenre. So yeah, it looks great. Chadwick Boseman looks electrifying. Like he looks like he's in his element with this one. J.K. Simmons is in it. Sienna Miller, Taylor Kitsch, Keith David. I mean, this is a stacked cast. This isn't like some throwaway movie like like Sleepless or something with Jamie Foxx that comes out in January and everyone forgets about it within a week. No, this looks like it could have some staying power, and it's coming out July 12th. Styx has so much confidence in this that they're going to throw it against bigger movies. And I actually think in July, it's not this weekend, but it's actually the next weekend, Lion King's going to dominate that month. So, if you can get these smaller films in there, make somewhat of an impact, I think that's kind of important for these type of films. So, listen.
It will help that the central audience for something like this is different than Spider-Man, which comes out the week before that.
That's true.
And then different from Lion King, which will go the next week. So it does help. I mean, it's not going to be like a big blockbuster. I doubt it, but it'll certainly be a success for Styx, and they need that.
Yeah, Well, I mean, especially when they're releasing Ugly Dolls next week. Ugh.
Yeah.
So with the 21 Bridges thing, Joel's right. If the small group of people that saw Black Panther, and this was their first time experiencing Chadwick Boseman, like, wow, this guy's really good. I want to see what he does next. I'm really hoping his Black Panther clout can propel a little bit more business towards this film, and that would be phenomenal. So I hope it's a good movie. If it's a bad movie, I will definitely not endorse it. But if it's a great movie, I will push it until the summer season is over and be like, listen, please go support these smaller movies. As much as Joel and I love bigger films like the Avengers and Star Wars and stuff, like I want love to go around everywhere. It's not just blockbusters versus indies. This is a collective industry in my eyes. I want everyone to support everything, but that's just not the case sometimes. So I'm hoping the movie's good. Fingers crossed. I do get Styx Films invites, so hopefully I'll get 21 Bridges, and I'm looking forward to it. So those are the 3 trailers this week. Joel, out of the ones I have described, is there one that kind of like piques your interest a little bit?
I'm a sci-fi guy, so certainly Gemini Man sounds interesting, but I'm probably most excited for 21 Bridges. Right. Should be good. So,
all right.
Child's Play. I mean, again, I'm sure it'll be fun. I'm not super like waiting for it or whatever, but I'm sure it'll be fun.
I want people to understand, like, when I bring up Child's Play in front of Joel's like that type of person to where, like, if you bring up like something really uncomfortable to that said person, they don't know how to react, so they just kind of like give you the finger guns and like, hey. That's how Joel is when I talk about Child's Play. He doesn't know what to say because he's not really a fan of them, and so I'm like, hey Joel, I'm super excited about the remake. Have you seen the other ones? He would literally look at me, do the finger guns, snap at me, and go, hey, and just walk away. So I'm glad to know that we have that type of relationship.
You're like that guy at the beginning of that one Office episode. Hey.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Like, hey.
You will not sell windshields or whatever they are, window cleaner or whatever they are to us. Okay, so getting into the news, there's not much to talk about. There's a few things here. So the first thing is that Salem's Lot, which is Stephen King's 1975 novel, is going to get another adaptation, and it's going to be produced by James Wan. Now, this one has had two adaptations, and one of those adaptations had a sequel. There was a 1979 miniseries of the same name. There was Return to Salem's Lot in 1987, and then there was a miniseries in 2004 starring Rob Lowe. All of them have actually become kind of hard to find on physical copy since release, but anyway, this one is about an author who returns to his hometown in order to write about an abandoned mansion, only to discover that its new European owner may have something to do with the locals turning into vampires. Pretty cool plot. I haven't ever read the novel or seen the other movies, but I think that Wan's kind of a really good fit for this. There's no director yet, but it is going to be written by Gary Dauberman, who is, of course, going to be coming straight off of Annabelle Comes Home. He also wrote The Nun. Remember The Nun? No, I don't either.
Try not to remember it. That was a very fun episode. Just side story. I recorded that in my parents' warehouse with my mother
right.
and my mother and my fiance.
I was gone that week.
Yeah, in the room, and they were packing because my parents were moving, and I just recorded an episode because I was like, screw it, whatever. And it was probably the best movie to talk about because I hated it, and my mom was like, "Why are you so angry at this movie?" It was so great.
It's great, and I was gone that week. I'm glad I lucked out. I didn't even see it in time. I think I saw it like on Sunday. Okay, so so that's coming out. Are you familiar with any sort of the source material, any of the other adaptations?
I can't say with confidence I am.
Okay. Well, in any case, pretty cool. Obviously, James Wan backed some really interesting stuff in the horror genre. So, I mean, we maybe not The Curse of La Llorona. We haven't found that out yet, but anyway, hey, King adaptations are killing it right now. We got It Chapter 2 coming up. La Llorona did really well. I mean, at least for its budget, it did really well. So I think it made 3 times its budget back in a single weekend. So, it could work out pretty well. Not many thoughts about that one, though. This next one's pretty cool. I didn't see his last movie, Live by Night. But of course,
I did.
Yeah, I remember you did. But of course, he's exited Batman, or The Batman, sorry. So now Ben Affleck is looking for his next directorial project, and it's going to be a movie called Ghost Army, and it's not a sci-fi movie or horror movie or anything. It is a World War II drama, and it's going to be a spy thriller as well, or some sort of thing. And it's based on a book called The Ghost Army of World War II by Rick Beyer and Elizabeth Sales. And it chronicles a squadron of American soldiers using old-fashioned smoke and mirrors to save lives. Selected for their creativity and ingenuity, they use blow-up tanks, fake radio transmissions, and noise machines to deceive the German forces, hiding the Allies' true locations and saving countless lives in the process. This is a freaking awesome premise. I can't believe this actually happened, and I can't wait to see this movie. He's really good. I think my favorite of his directorial efforts is probably The Town, at least the ones that I've seen. I'm not in a hurry to see Live by Night, although I might catch up with it before this. But I've been a pretty big fan of Gone Baby Gone, The Town, and Argo. I think The Town's probably my favorite. I like Argo, not a worthy Best Picture winner, but in terms of the nominees that year. But Gone Baby Gone's pretty excellent, and The Town I think is really intense stuff. And our friend Mark would agree. That was his 5th favorite movie of 2010. So, I love that one. So I'm looking forward to him, first of all, taking on an even, further back in history moment than Live by Night. And also just the story is incredible. He's going to star in it too. Likely as the team leader, I would suspect. So, or the squadron leader, I guess would be the more technical term. Can't wait for this. And it's going to be pretty great. It's going to be written by True Detective creator Nick Pizzolatto. It was also coming off an earlier draft written out of nowhere by Henry Gayden, the Shazam screenwriter. So that's an interesting combination of people. But what do you think about this? Does this sound awesome to you too?
Oh, I love it. And the fact that the creator of True Detective I'm already sold. And then when
Yeah,
you
I
add
mean
the
it's suspense, and it's his area. He also directed this movie that I watched. I failed to review it, but or he wrote it. I'm sorry, he wrote this movie. He might have directed it too, called Galveston last year with Ben Foster and Elle Fanning. Really good movie. So I've only watched the first season of True Detective and half the second. Um,
the third season's pretty great.
yeah, third. I've heard that, and I feel the need to finish the second season just because, but maybe I won't. Um, anyway, yeah, I've been a fan of his works of art. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh no, I was just saying that I love True Detective. I like Ben Affleck as a director. Like you said, Argo is solid. I like it. The Town is my favorite for sure, and then Gone Baby Gone is another a great debut from him. But yeah, Live by Night to me it was just at bare minimum it was passable, and for something of that era, that story, and that kind of that scope, that's not what you want to hear for your movie. So to be honest
Right.
with you, I don't remember anything specific about it. I saw it in the same weekend as Triple X Return of Xander Cage, and I remember more about that movie than I do Live by Night. So I don't know if that's saying anything or what, but yeah.
Meanwhile, I completely forgot until you mentioned it that Triple X Return of Xander Cage was a thing. So that probably wouldn't bode well for me in terms of seeing Live by Night.
Right.
Uh,
Do a double feature,
boy,
Joel, like I did.
yeah. I mean, it's not that Xander Cage was bad or whatever. It was better than the
I,
second one, but
I was
it's just
fixing to say,
like
like, it that
whatever.
movie knew what it wanted to be, though. Live by Night didn't know what it
Yeah.
wanted to be.
Okay then. All right. So some casting news. Again, not much to talk about here, but Leonardo DiCaprio is going to be working with Guillermo del Toro for the first time, and he's going to be starring in Nightmare Alley. Um, this one is an adaptation of a 1946 novel by William Lindsay Gresham, and it chronicles the rise and fall of a con man. It is set against the backdrop of a carnival, and not a very popular carnival. And yeah, I'm just excited on the basis of the fact that he's working with Del Toro. I don't know much more about the plot here, but that's I'm sold. I love DiCaprio. I love Del Toro. Bring it on. The next bit is that Jennifer Lopez and Owen Wilson are combining to make the most 2008 movie ever, and it's a romantic comedy backed by Styx, uh, and it's called Marry Me, and it's about a pop star bride who ditches her lying, cheating groom at the altar in front of a crowd of thousands, and then the spirit of the show must go on, picks a random man in attendance, played by Wilson, and goes through with the ceremony. Will the two of them live happily ever after, or will their holy matrimony be annulled before the end of the week? So basically, it's an adaptation of a certain point in Britney Spears' life, and whatever. It's going to be directed by Kat Coro. It's based on a graphic novel out of nowhere by Bobby Crosby. Whatever. The next bit is that Jennifer Lawrence. It's weird. It's weird. So we get like these rumors of like year-long hiatuses from acting, but through whatever means, it doesn't seem like the actress in question takes a break. So first there was Emma Watson, who I guess she hasn't really done much since Beauty and the Beast in the Circle a couple of years ago. So she took a break, and that one's been noticeable. But Jennifer Lawrence apparently took a break. Yet, uh, what was it called? Red Sparrow didn't come out for I think a couple months after it was supposed to. I think that was one of those that was delayed. And then you had Dark Phoenix was delayed for a bunch of time. And then now, we're supposed to kind of be excited about the news that she's coming back to acting, even though she's never really been away for us. Anyway, she's coming back to acting, apparently, with a movie with A24. And that is, we don't know really much about this. There was trying to look here, because, what? Hold on. So, where is the? Okay, so it's about an Afghan war vet coming back with a traumatic brain injury. It's and she's going to be the soldier. and Brian Tyree Henry's also in it. Pretty cool. I like this idea. I like the fact that Lawrence is coming back with kind of an indie movie, a smaller profile thing than some big franchise. I think that that's a good idea. She's a good actress when she really hunkers down on a dramatic role, and hopefully this is something that's going to be reminiscent of like Winter's Bone, which she was nominated for an Oscar for that, and sounds intense. So I'm excited for that. The next bit is really cool. So all right. Kristen Wiig and Annie Mumolo were once nominated for an Oscar for writing Bridesmaids, but Mumolo hasn't done a whole lot of lead acting at least that I know of. At least I'm pretty sure that she hasn't done. I mean, she's appeared in stuff before. I don't think that she's had many memorable movie roles. So this is going to be the first one for her. And it's a movie with a really funny title, at least to me. Barb and Star go to Vista Del Mar. It's about a pair of friends who go on vacation to Vista Del Mar, Florida, and they find themselves tangled up in an adventure involving romance and also a villain's evil plot to kill everyone in town. So that's an interesting little mix. I like that. This sounds like it could be a good time if they play it right. So I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be directed by Josh Greenbaum, who's really only directed some documentaries up until this point, but he's also directed episodes of New Girl and Fresh Off the Boat. So looking forward to that. All right. The last bit of news is that okay. Actually, don't know if you saw this movie, Chase. Did you ever see Columbus?
John Cho, right?
Yeah.
No, I did not.
Okay. Really good movie, and it's from a filmmaker named Kogonada. That's what he's credited as, just that name. I don't know if he has another one. I haven't looked into that, but it was a very small movie, just basically following John Cho and Haley Lou Richardson as they kind of build a romance, sort of, over the course of walking around a college in Indiana, a university in Indiana, an architectural conference building, I think, in Indiana, and really good. But Coconut is moving on to something much, much bigger, and that is a sci-fi story about a world where robotic children are purchased as live-in babysitters. This sort of kind of AI, artificial intelligence-y. So, and he's got some pretty good stars here. Some smaller ones like Justin Min, who's on the Umbrella Academy right now, Sarita Chowdhury, whose name is probably less familiar than her face to passersby. But and also Golshifteh Farahani, we just saw her in Girls of the Sun at the film festival. She was the main actress there. She's done some really solid work. But the two main stars are going to be Colin Farrell and Farahani, who play a couple who adopt an AI sibling named Yang, or Yang, I guess, played by Justin Min. And Haley Lou Richardson is going to be playing another AI who strikes up a relationship with Yang. And Chowdhury plays a museum director. So anyway, this is really interesting, goodness me, I just lost a word. This is a really interesting plot, and I'm excited to see what he does, because basically Kogonada, before he directed Columbus, was kind of a film critic type who did essay videos, and then he was doing that while he was in film school, and so then he kind of took on this project, got a couple big names attached, and Columbus ended up really good. So, I mean, he's going to be directing something with at least a little bit of a bigger scope, maybe a bigger size, and I'm interested to see what he does with that, particularly, potentially working with visual effects, maybe, if he goes that direction. So that might be actually my favorite thing, just because of the person behind it. So what are your thoughts about all of these?
Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty good group here. I mean, the obvious Leonardo DiCaprio and Del Toro, give me. And then you have Lawrence and and Henry in the A24 film. Cool. Both of them have been in A24 films. Yeah, I'm cool with that. I'm excited to see what Wig and Mumolo bring in their kind of like second effort, their comeback. They should have had a second one a little sooner after Bridesmaids, but glad they're jumping on that kind of success now. And then, yeah, everything else is pretty solid. Just a really good week. And like I said, God bless any of those news sources that wanted to drop news in the typhoon known as Avengers Endgame.
Right. Yeah, it hasn't been a big couple of weeks really, because obviously we didn't do news last week. So some of that broke a week and a half ago. Anyway, pretty solid week all around. All right, folks, we're here. We've given you a break. Now, if you don't want to know specifics about Avengers Endgame,
we'll see you next week.
Exit. Yes, exactly. In fact, I guess we should just go ahead and kind of plug our stuff, right?
Right. Yeah.
Might as well.
Just in case if people do
just
not
in case,
want to see
yes.
it. Yeah. So if you guys want to
so
follow,
if it's your first time listening to this and you don't want to know specifics, next week we'll have an episode with a special guest named Terrence, and we're going to be doing a summer movie preview. Now, you're probably wondering, wait a minute, but the summer just began. I'm a purist when it comes to release dates because they moved it back a week to April, it's no longer a summer movie to me. So we're doing a summer movie preview from next weekend onward through the end of August, and we have a guest on named Terrence. So everybody who listens to this will know him. But if you don't, then that's what's next week. And then Beyond that, pretty much the episodes, we'll have episodes on Pokemon, John Wick, Aladdin, Godzilla. So there you go. That's the next month or so for you. All right. Yeah. So where can people find you online, Chase?
Yeah, if you guys want to follow me on Twitter, it's @RealChaseLees. Follow the podcast Twitter page is @RealMeAndPodcast. And of course, just helping this show out, whatever platform you guys are listening on, spread it around, like, share, whatever you have to do. I love seeing you guys get really interactive, asking us questions, and having the numbers grow. It's nice to know that people will listen to two yucks like Joel and myself, so we appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. You can follow me on Twitter @RealJoelCopling. You can follow my Letterboxd page @JCopling. You should all be on Letterboxd. It's awesome. And then in terms of my website, I write reviews both for DallasMovieScreenings.com and also JoelOnFilm.com, which is my personal website. In terms of reviews this week, they're going to come later than usual, and it's actually related to a Facebook group that I'm part of. I decided to give myself a couple days to see High Life, which I haven't seen yet. That's on the docket for today, and I'll be writing about it tomorrow morning. So by the time Monday gets here, you should have reviews of Avengers Endgame and High Life in theaters. I also have recently caught up with a couple of movies on streaming, The Standoff at Sparrow Creek and West of Sunshine, a couple of kind of dramatic thrillers that I quite liked. And so that's the deal. And of course, sometime next week, later on, maybe Wednesday or Thursday, I'll have a big time spoiler review of Avengers Endgame to work out all of my thoughts. And speaking of which, let's go ahead and dive into that. So from here on out, guys, these are spoilers. We're not leaving anything out, pretty much. I mean, obviously, we're not going to spend 3 hours talking about in every single plot device,
No.
Right, we're not going to get. I mean, we're going to give most of everything away in general, but yeah, we're not going to spend so long on this. But
so we're just going to say right now, here is your warning: 3, 2, 1. Spoiler section. Here we go, Joel.
Yes.
My goodness.
Okay.
So much.
Yeah, so much to talk about. So to just kind of continue off where I left off on the plot. I actually no. So I will just say this. So we've teased you a bit in terms of the spoiler-free zone. We've brought up some things in the second half that you're like, what? Again in that voice. You're probably like, wait a minute, but I thought that they beat Thanos early on. So why are they fighting him at the end? Yeah. Wait a minute. Why are they reuniting with people? And who are they reuniting with? Yeah. Wait a minute. It's time travel. So what are they doing? Where are they going back to? Yeah. So 5 years after the defeat of Thanos, they discover that the world is still pretty awful. And again, it's because of that question, or that sort of the question that the universe is asking them, which is, yeah, sure, you killed Thanos, but what about this other problem you have? And that problem is the missing people. Because if you remember, Thanos' goal was to destroy half of life in order to um, preserve kind of the universe's resources, which he felt were being overused by too many people, too many lives. So he wanted to wipe out half of life, and he did that. What he didn't expect, and what he actually ends up acknowledging near the end of the movie, and we'll get to why he's at the end of the movie in a second, he didn't account for mourning, and he didn't account for the fact that he probably should have just multiplied the resources rather than dividing the people, because especially on Earth, fewer people with the same amount of resources as the original amount of people means there's a lot of waste, and it basically becomes a gigantic apocalypse with everybody really unsure what to do with all this trash that accumulates. We see Ant-Man as he exits his little time travel device,
which, by the way,
quantum realm device.
That rat is the hero of the movie. If that rat never stepped on that button, we would have never gotten this movie.
So literally, Ant-Man is able to escape because a rat is crawling across the front of the thing and just so happens to press a button on the little device that Hope, Hank, and Janet were using to put him in the quantum realm, and he turns it on, and he ejects Ant-Man out of the van.
I also like how Kim Jong didn't say anything. He just said, "Get out, please get out of here. What are you doing?"
Yeah, exactly. And also, like, how'd you get in here?
Right. It's like no questions. Just like, can you please
where
leave?
Did you come from? Yes, exactly. And so, anyway, he comes out. He finds that there has been a universe that has been depopulated majorly, and he goes and finds his daughter, and that's the reunion that I mentioned. He reunites with his daughter, who is much older. They only get one scene together.
Oh, it's such a great scene.
But it's such a great scene. Yeah, I mean, the reaction for both of them, his kind of what I love about his moment is that he underplays it. He literally just says, "You're grown," or "You're bigger," or something like that, And yeah, I love how brief it is.
It was genuine,
but how impactful.
Yeah, it was very genuine.
Exactly. Yeah. So Ant-Man finds Steve Rogers and Black Widow at the Avengers headquarters, and they try to go off and convince Iron Man, who has gone into hiding in these 5 years with Pepper and raised a daughter, to go back in time and steal the stones before Thanos gets them. So that's basically the major plot of this movie, is that there is a time heist, as he calls it. He bases all of his rules, off of Back to the Future, and the rest of the movie, or much of the rest of the movie, turns into the Back to the Future Part 2.
Joel, I just want to say one thing. That is one of the things I'm kind of iffy on, is the kind of like fast-natured approach that Tony Stark has with time travel. He's like, yeah, I've been working on it. I figured it out. It's like, what?
No, see, I thought that it was a great joke, because basically it was sort of this little humorous moment where he's such a genius that all he really needed to do was invert something, and then he solved it. And I thought that I got a little chuckle out of that, and the way that he also underplays the moment when he tells Pepper, he's like, I figured it out, and she's like, what? And he's like, time travel. And she's like, oh, okay. And so I thought that was a nice little joke. I didn't take it to be a serious character moment for him, more than just like a little gag that just kind of shows the level of genius that we're working with when it comes to Tony,
right? And
how some of it's untapped just because of the limits of human intellect, even his own.
And that's fair. And the way you spin I will, when I see it for a second time, I'm going to think about like that and see if it changes my mind about that.
Right. And it's even pointed out by Rocket. Like, he even tells him, only on Earth are you a huge genius, dude. And so, whereas elsewhere, they probably have figured this out, specifically because the major conflict comes in, and I'm kind of jumping here, but the major conflict comes in when the Thanos of 2014, the one who is in control and kind of over Ronan in Guardians of the Galaxy, um, is made aware of the plan through a very interesting plot device. I'll get to that in a second. But he comes into it and he's not surprised at all, or really showing any sort of awe. I mean, maybe a little bit of surprise, but no awe inspired there. He's probably heard of time travel before. He's probably done it. He probably knows that it's a thing because probably elsewhere that's not Earth they have it. So it's interesting how, in one part of this story, and that's why I like this movie so much. In one part of the story, such a thing is surprising. And then in another part, it's not. It's because there's an entire universe we're working with here, and I think that was really clever how they were able to kind of keep the awe inspiration of Tony's discovery, and also kind of treat it as just in terms of Thanos' plan. He's like, oh well, then this is what I need to do, and I like that quite a bit. Meanwhile, Black Widow goes off to Japan to find Hawkeye, who has become a violent vigilante in the wake of his entire family being dusted away. In the opening scene, like, full disclosure here, I nearly had a panic attack in the opening scene because of how they play it. They don't play it with any of the grave music that they had during the disappearances of the people in Infinity War. It's literally just a scene that plays and suddenly they're gone. And I think that everything about that scene is perfectly played. So, for instance, and I know I'm like jumping all over the place in the narrative here, but trust me, guys. So this opening scene is hinted at in the trailer. We see Hawkeye teaching his daughter to use a bow and arrow, and there's a point at which he turns around. We see a little scattering of dust where she has disappeared, and this is important, he does not. So he's suddenly wondering where she is. He's looking around a bit, and by the time he's turned around to his family, they're all having a picnic outside. All of his wife, Linda Cardellini, and the two boys in their family, all of them have disappeared. And suddenly he's running around the scene, and holy crap, it's really well played. All right, so back to the main plot. Basically, she goes to find him. He decides to be the test subject for the time travel tests, and it works. He's able to go back in time for a few minutes to the point at which his family was alive. And so he and Black Widow go off to Vormir in 2014, where they are going to find the Soul Stone. And Hawkeye and Black Widow fight it out for who's going to make the sacrifice. Black Widow does. So that's the end of Black Widow in this universe for now, chronologically.
And I actually thought that Clint was going to be the one to jump the cliff because he was the one that was actually in projection. He was running. He was almost there, and then she does it at the last second. I'm like, oh my God, this is heartbreaking to watch.
So once we get into kind of talking about the quality of this stuff, I have a problem with that scene, but I'm gonna get to that later. So, meanwhile, Thor and Rocket go off to Asgard in 2013 during the events of Thor: The Dark World. Again, who knew that movie would be important? In order to steal the ether from Jane Foster, and Thor gets a little moment with his mother, while Rocket goes off and uses a little sucking device to get the ether, because of course the ether's been implanted in Jane Foster after the events of that movie. Or during the events of that movie. So there's that. Meanwhile, Iron Man, Ant-Man, the Hulk, who is kind of in a midway point between Bruce Banner and the Angry Hulk, called Lesser Hulk, as well as Captain America, go back in time to 3 points. One is 2012 during the Battle of New York, where they try to steal the Mind Stones. That doesn't really work out very well, although they are able to get the Mind Stone. They then head forward a couple of years, or do they? No, they don't. I'm sorry, because I was confused a little bit there for a second because we saw Robert Redford's Alexander Pierce from Winter Soldier. So of course I'm sorry. So no, they go back to 2012, and then they go back to another point in the 70s where the Space Stone is at an army kind of fortress, and that is where Tony gets to meet his dad. And there's a brief little touching moment between them that he kind of plays off as his name being Howard Potts, which I thought was really funny. So yeah, basically that's the plot here. And of course, and for Nebula and War Machine, they go off to the events also of 2014 on Morag, where Peter Quill had previously taken the Power Stone. So basically, in the middle of all of this, Professor Hulk goes off and visits the Ancient One at the Sanctum Sanctorum, gets the Time Stone, in probably what is the best scene in the movie for me, or one of them. He gets to visit the Ancient One and tell her, and they talk about the specifics of time travel from a scientific perspective. And it also has my favorite bit of acting, and you know what it is, right? From Tilda Swinton, when she is told the fate of the Time Stone.
Yeah.
I think that literally only Tilda Swinton could have pulled that off, because she's a great actress and one of our best working right now. And I think it's also the moment where things really start to kind of come together within our understanding of what's going on. That we, in this narrative, although, we had in the back of our mind the fact that Doctor Strange said it's the only way, and that's why he gave up the Time Stone to Thanos. I think that in this moment is where most people are going to make that connection of, okay, so really it's nobody's fault. And yes, I'm talking about the whole blaming Star-Lord thing here. It's nobody's fault. It's how it was going to be. So I love that moment. It's my favorite moment in the movie. And so after all of this, they get the stones, and they bring everyone back, or they try to. Hulk takes over a kind of a new version of a gauntlet and snaps his fingers. At the same time, Nebula has interfaced with her past self, who is still bad, and her past self comes to the future as a spy, posing as her future self, and this past Nebula uses the time machine to bring Thanos and his army from 2014 into 2023, 22, something like that, 23, where these characters are going to do battle upon the rubble of the Avengers facility, because he attacks it with a rocket and completely obliterates everything. This causes a huge battle in which everybody, including all the people who had been vanished, come back for a huge Lord of the Rings style battle, and a huge gigantic hero shot that tracks for at least 30 seconds through a line of people that you never thought you'd see in this battle again, just because you never know how well this plan would work. There's a legitimate sense of suspense here that is incredible. And yeah, so that's the movie. It's a lot to take in. There's so much happening here. But again, I love how well it was handled, because what they do, particularly in the time travel parts, is they use it as an opportunity, one, to give us a different kind of time travel. And I know that you have many questions about it. They explain it in this very quick way. Basically, it's not linear. It doesn't work like Back to the Future. They actually acknowledge the fact that Ant-Man has a line
Let
about it.
me let me
Uh,
clarify. I don't have a lot of questions about the actual time travel itself because I think for the most part they pretty much point blank told us as the audience like how it works, especially with that rooftop scene. I'm talking more in terms of time placement for like Far From Home, given the fact that we saw that end scene with Peter and Ned. It's like, where are we going to still be 5 ahead? Are we going to be behind? Like, so that's the only thing I'm worried about in terms of continuity. I'm not worried about the actual time travel itself, because I thought it was handled
okay.
pretty well.
Okay, so here's what I'm thinking is happening. I think that this movie is going to take place after the next Captain Marvel movie, because as we see, between the initial defeat of Thanos and the events of later on, she gets a haircut. She has a different physical appearance because of her haircut than what we are used to. So I have a feeling that there's going to be something that happens in the Captain Marvel sequel that is before all of this happens, and at some point we're going to find out what happens to her to make her have a haircut. So it's just a simple thing that they're showing us. Basically, something happens to Captain Marvel in between this time, and yes, that's what I'm thinking happens. So then with Spider-Man, it is a big question. We haven't seen the trailer, so we don't know if it acknowledges any of this at all. That's one that we're avoiding. Maybe our answers could be, or questions could be answered by that trailer. I don't know, but we're not going to see. So there is a lot of question there. I I feel like he gets his own reunion, of course, at the end of the movie. Um, I guess I did kind of jump over this a little bit. I didn't talk about this. All right. So at the end of the battle, the person that ends up perishing is Tony, who makes the decision to kind of egged on by Doctor Strange wordlessly. Great little moment there, by the way. He snaps his fingers with the Infinity Stones on the gauntlet that he made, taking them from Thanos, and wipes out Thanos and all of his army. And then the radiation from the stones kills Tony. And there's a great little scene of him being comforted by some people. And then, of course, the final moments are all involve kind of his funeral and the future direction of the characters. So we have a big funeral with everybody from Pepper to the kid in Iron Man 3 shows up at the funeral. And it's also probably the biggest collection of peak 90s actors to be on screen together since probably an Oscars telecast sometime. Everybody from Michael Douglas to Samuel L. Jackson to Michelle Pfeiffer, to William Hurt to everybody. It's insane. And at the end of the movie, we have Cap going back in time to replace the stones and then staying there so that he can live an actual life with Peggy, played by Haley Atwell. And he passes off his shield to Sam with Bucky's approval. Meanwhile, Thor appoints Valkyrie, Queen of Asgard, while he goes off with the Guardians of the Galaxy. I think, is that it? Pretty sure that's it. Oh, and one thing that actually kind of left us off on kind of a sad moment was Peter and Gamora are no longer of the same time period here, because Gamora was killed in Infinity War not by the hand of Thanos, but by the gauntlet of Thanos. The Gamora that appears here is from before the events, or just before the events of Guardians of the Galaxy 1. So she has now been jettisoned, I guess, like 9 years in the future to this part. So she doesn't know Peter yet. And, of course, he was parted with her, learned of her death, and anyway, so he's kind of left at the end searching for her. Again, there's a lot going on here in terms of where it leaves the characters off. I think that because of the reunion that Peter has at the end with his friend Ned, although we don't see Mary Jane, I think that Far From Home might end up taking place before Infinity War. Before the events of these two movies. Um, Largely because we get Nick Fury, we get this moment where he clearly is still kind of in charge. I don't know because he'll still be in charge. I don't know. I don't know. It's a big question mark. There's a lot of moving parts here in terms of who's going to go where. Is Thor going to be part of the next Guardians movie? Like, is that where they're going with this? Is he going to join that franchise? If so, then that's that's an interesting direction for that group. It's going to be fun to see them kind of quarrel because, of course, through the events of this movie, whenever they're trying to get Thor back into this plan, they come upon him basically fat and lazy in Norway, where he's set up New Asgard. It leads to one of the funniest moments, probably the funniest moment in the movie, both in terms of what Chris Hemsworth does and also because of the reactions of the other actors, is he gives a drunken explanation of the plot of Thor: The Dark World that absolutely murdered me. I was crying laughing at that scene because he cannot make any sense of it, and neither can anybody else. He's just trying to get through drunkenly. I have to stress that this explanation of what the ether is and where it is in the timeline. So then it cuts back to all the other characters who are trying to figure out what he's talking about, except for one person, and that is Ant-Man, who is enthralled by this. He is his expression is the funniest expression in the entire movie. It's the funniest moment of acting, and it's great. So anyway, so basically he becomes Fat Thor, and he stays that way the entire movie. I thought that they were going to have a scene where he gets back in shape, but no, he stays that way, and he remains kind of Fat Thor throughout the entire thing, and that includes the big final battle. So it's going to be interesting to see him kind of get back into the groove with the Guardians of the Galaxy, see that kind of camaraderie develop, or the chemistry at least. And, as they probably, I would imagine that Guardians 3 is going to be about them trying to rope Gamora back into everything. I don't know, but it's going to be very interesting to see where they go. Of course, we're getting a Black Widow movie. That one's going to be set in the 90s. I suspect that the Doctor Strange sequel is going to have him kind of facing off against Baron Mordo. That is who becomes a villain in the series. I'm pretty sure in the comics. There's a bunch of directions. In terms of the timeline, though, yeah, I mean, I guess that they would have to just be in 2023 or wherever they are right now in the years. I don't know. It's an interesting question. We'll have to see, but yeah. So what were your thoughts about how they played out? First of all, the time travel. Do you agree with me that basically they use it to comment kind of on the scale of the franchise in really funny ways?
Yeah. I mean, they utilize time travel in this movie not only for, like I said, the visual gags and just showing the scope of this entire universe, which is just daunting to look at. But it's also great for some really great character moments with Thor talking to his mom, and he's just like, "I failed," and she's like, "Yeah, you failed, but you need to, pick yourself up," type of deal. It's just, oh man, that one got me. And then when Tony met up with his dad. And
I love how the dad moment is played, because other than the fact that, of course, it's a little bit of a stretch to think that this moment would happen between Howard Stark and a random dude he saw in a basement.
Right. But yeah.
But Tony plays it in such a way that he's basically able to get a little bit of an insight into his father. And he's never really had that.
I love the way it's written, because he doesn't have any subtlety. He immediately jumps in like, "Oh, I have a daughter," because he wants his dad to know that he has a granddaughter type of deal, but he knows he can't say anything, and so like that's what was so great about the scene. He was so eager to just tell his dad that he has a granddaughter, that's what got me. And then just having their conversation and their banter, it's those moments in the movie that are super sobering. Whether it be with that, or Thor and his mom, or even when Nebula goes back and interacts with all that. It's just kind of incredible that they could have easily thrown this entire section away into like a goofy, just campy like time travel section, which they do to some degree. You know, it has those fun kind of flair moments, but dude, there's so much heart in that section. And then of course,
they balance it really
right. And let's jump into the scene that you said you have an issue with the whole Hawkeye and Black Widow
thing? I don't know how much sense it makes for Black Widow to make that kind of sacrifice.
I think it does, just because if she knows that she can get the Soul Stone and reverse this, then she knows that she can give Clint his family back, which is the sacrifice that she can give, because she doesn't have anybody. And so the only person she truly has, yes, is the Avengers family, but it's Clint. It's always been Clint from day one, and they've had that really deep friendship that none of us can ever comprehend. And so if you're sitting there and you're saying, I'm going to sacrifice myself, and then the person's like, no, I'm sacrificing myself, you're going to think of your friends more than yourself. So if she's in that moment going, if this works, if this plan has any inkling of working, I can bring Clint's family back. And I think that was the mindset she had going into it.
And I think it was just the build up to the fact that they were initially going to have Clint do this when his entire point is to reunite with his family was weird to me. I felt like maybe they wrote themselves into a corner with that particular subplot. But anyway, it's also weird to me too that they sent the two characters who have no superpowers to space.
Right.
But anyway, whatever. It's just very small. I feel like there's no way you could rewrite it either. So it's again, it's kind of small. It just didn't make that much sense to me.
I thought sending them to the Soul Stone type of cliff area made sense to me, only because if you sent War Machine and Nebula, for instance, who are they going to sacrifice? They don't even know each other.
Yeah.
Right. The reason why those two were sent, and I think they knew, or whoever devised this plan and sent them off into the area, they actually knew that this had to happen, because if the other groups went, they can't sacrifice one another, because if they do, they're just killing each other, and there's no actual meaning behind it, because as you know, Red Skull states, you have to sacrifice something that you love. So if War Machine and Nebula went, and War Machine just kicks Nebula off the cliff, and she dies, then that's pointless, because you don't get the stone. You just killed someone. There was no purpose behind it. And so
what if they had sent Iron Man and Captain America?
That would have been fascinating.
Yeah, because that's the kind of thing that I think would have made a little bit more sense. And then you have maybe, because, okay, so they were able to do pretty well in the Battle of New York. I'm talking about Hawkeye and Black Widow. So what if you just sent them back with Scott Lang and Hulk, and then had Iron Man and Captain America go out? That's how Iron Man would die.
But it's also
Captain America gets the Soul Stone. You know,
I don't know. But you're also exchanging the kind of impact of Tony's death at the battle. So I mean, you're trading one for the other.
You could maybe replace that with like Captain America's death. I'm just saying, like, they could have done a little bit different.
It's weird to me, because like, hearing you out, it would make sense if they did that. But also, if you look at where Cap started, and this was a guy that was really kind of bent on getting into the military, fighting for his country, really patriotic person. He has grown into a person now that doesn't view war as like a savage type of brutality that most people might perceive war to be. He does it through peace and through kindness, and I think him sacrificing all of his time, his energy, and doing good for all these years, I think was the most satisfying character arc for him, to go back in time and finally get the life that he wanted. and finally settle down because he has sacrificed so much, especially being out of time. Most of the people he grew up with are dead. I think that was probably the best way to go. So I don't think him dying in the battle would have really made sense to me in terms of character arc.
It's interesting because I think we have a different view of this character.
Right.
I think that he's become cynical rather than idealistic. He's trying to keep some of that idealism, but he's been really battered down by this kind of big government. He's a
which I totally agree, and I think that's why I'm spinning the whole idea of like he uses like negotiation.
I think it would have been
peace.
more. I think it actually would have been more within his character. This is why. I mean, not everything's going to thread together. I think ever in a franchise like this.
Right.
They do a really good job here, and they have really emotional sacrifices. I think actually it would have made more sense in Captain America's character to, because he has been constantly about laying down his life, whereas Tony has spent the last few movies
selfish,
building up
entitled, and then he
no, not in the last few movies. Those are the first few movies. The last few movies he's been built up as a father figure and now he becomes a literal father. But you think about his connection with Spider-Man, and they get a reunion here that's really touching. And then they turn around and kill him, and it's very emotional. And the scene is played out great. And of course we're talking about the movie that is, and the movie that is very effective at handling that moment. But in terms of making sense with the character, I think it would have made more sense for Iron Man to not have died, for him to have been kind of gone off and retired and refused to help pretty much from here on out, so that he makes a clean getaway. Meanwhile, Captain America is the one that everybody needs to mourn because he's the symbol of America. And
that's true. I totally get what you're saying, but I just think when you think about like the arc of Iron Man, like this was a guy that was a billionaire. He was very selfish. He didn't really care about anybody. And I think all the stuff that he has seen as a normal person, like he's not from, the cosmic universe. He's from Earth. And so when he sees all these alien beings, like it has taken a toll on him. He's been beaten. He's been battered. And then there was a certain point where he, starts to care a little bit more and starts to really look out for his fellow human. And then I think him sacrificing himself at the end is a complete total circle of his character, because if you look at where he started and where he ended, a complete 180, and actually makes total sense with his growth and what he has seen and kind of like the war that he has gone through.
It is a good bookend because, of course,
right.
Excuse me. Because, of course, he started as very selfish, very self-absorbed, and then he makes the selfless sacrifice. But I think that the selfless sacrifice could have been giving up the mantle of America's greatest defender or whatever, in terms of just kind of a symbolic sacrifice, rather than a literal one, because now, the movie leaves a child without a father. Spider-Man ends up being kind of hopeless.
Can we talk about that for a moment? Like that scene with Tony dying and like Peter coming up first and like saying his piece, and then Pepper just very calmly pushes him out of the way.
Yeah.
And she does it so brilliantly. I'm never really like a huge fan of Gwyneth Paltrow, but I do think that I will give her credit where credit is due. She sold me on this scene. Like what happens is when Tony is dying, she doesn't immediately cry. What she does is she calmly tells him, like, she comforts him. Yeah, she comforts him, and she's like, "You're at peace now. You can finally rest." And then when he finally goes, that's when she breaks down. And it's an expertly crafted scene, not only written but directed, in crafting these actors to do those certain moments and not just fully break down or fully, shut her guard down. It was like a mix of both, and it was played so beautifully. Just, you're at peace. You can rest now. I'm here for you. You've done good, Tony. And then when he goes, she breaks down. It's so good.
Unlike you, I'm a pretty big Gwyneth Paltrow fan. I've seen a lot of her movies.
But like, it just, I think
she's an Academy Award-winning actress. She's won Best Actress before.
But she also hasn't really been anything in the past 10 years that has been like, whoa.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. She hasn't been in movies in a while, so I mean, in those movies in a while. So
Right.
she had a big gap where there was probably contract stuff and all that. I can't remember what it was, but there was a reason that she didn't appear for a while, and was just kind of operating things off screen. But and it was also likely because Tom Holland did not know that that was going to happen, considering they kept so much from him um, as an actor that he probably did not realize that Iron Man was going to die until they were shooting it. That is what I've been led to believe by the fact that both they did not let Tom Holland read anything except for literally his lines of dialogue, and also that they gave Mark Ruffalo a fake screenplay for him to read, and he read scenes that they never filmed. So that's what I'm thinking is they literally took like an approach in terms of actively misdirecting some of these actors who have been a little bit loose-lipped. So I have a feeling that those tears that Peter Parker have are actually Tom Holland's, because I have a feeling that he did not know that that was going to happen. So,
Which is great. It
and
goes
you
back
can
to
get
the whole like genuine feel of all these people either reconnecting with loved ones or losing loved ones. It's just everything felt so raw and real, and that's really rare in this genre.
oh, absolutely, and especially in these movies, I think that they can be a little. Let's face it, they're manufactured products,
And that's
and
fine.
so
I'm willing to
in
admit
terms
that.
of yeah, in terms of genuine like this kind of emotion, this rawness, they don't have a lot of that. They have a lot of they'll have sincere moments, but they won't have the raw emotion of stuff like that. It's pretty powerful, and um yeah, I mean it's a great way to cap it. I just in terms of how this series has built its characters, I think that they were going to have Chris Evans stop anyway. They might as well have had him die, and then have Iron Man kind of just go off and retire. I just personally think it would have been more in line with what they'd been building up to within the characters,
But I
personalities.
think what we have to tell our listeners is that you and I can differentiate on who was supposed to live and who was supposed to retire or die or whatever. But I think we can both agree that what we were shown was pretty well done.
We're reviewing the movie that we have, and the movie that
Right.
we have is what happens. So I'm totally fine with how it plays out. I'm talking about existential things here, really, in terms of
Basically what Joel is doing is something that him and I will argue and complain about for the next 50 years. We're like, hey, you remember in Endgame when this happened? It should have went this way. Joel, that's not the movie we got. I actually think it was appropriate. And you'll be like, no.
Whenever you are on your deathbed and you are about to take your last breath, I will say,
I hate you. I already know what you're going to say.
Captain America should have died.
Oh, I hate you. I'm going to be like, no, Joel, and then I'm just going to die. I'm going to have the high ground and have the last word. That's what I'm going to do.
Either I'll do that. I'm sure that now that I've said that, you're going to bar me from your deathbed. So I'll probably just send a message along with So the final people that you see. No, but anyway, see, this is how we love to just kind of clown on each other. I love you, Chase. So yeah, fantastic movie. Lots to go over. We didn't even cover all of it. I mean,
no, we didn't. But I think the specific moments that we wanted to kind of touch upon, I think we covered it pretty well. And just one real quick thing. One of my favorite shots, top 3 of this entire universe. I'll go ahead and say it. It's at the very end when Cap is standing in front of Thanos and his army, and it cuts back to a really far back wide shot. And in the left corner, we see Captain America's little body, and then on the right, we see this gigantic army, and it is shot and colorized in a way that reminds me of when Valkyrie was killing Hela in the flashbacks in Ragnarok. It was beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. And really, I mean, there's a lot of, again, I just wish I wish, one, I didn't see it in 3D, and two, that it was just generally in a lighter palette, because some of my favorite moments are in that. There's this moment where, okay, Captain America ends up being worthy to hold Mjolnir. And so there's this moment where Thor and Captain America switch weapons.
He's like, you take the little one.
Yes, and I have to wonder if that was improvised on Chris Hemsworth's part.
Hemsworth is so good
because
at
I
improv.
feel like I feel like maybe there was probably a line written along the lines of "Let's switch weapons," but then he decided to say, "You take the smaller one," because of course Thor is the alpha male. He has to be the one that's the biggest. Anyway, it's great, and also great little moment in terms of Captain America picking up Mjolnir. Is the fact that he ends up wielding it with more precision than Thor ever did. Like he uses it as a weapon more effectively than Thor ever has.
Well, and that's
So
also
really
that's
fun.
also harkening back to like his military mindset, where he is precise and like he doesn't
Yeah, yeah.
think about the failure. He's like
He just
he knows what yeah.
yeah, he just knows immediately how to use a weapon, and so whenever he's finally able to figure out how to use this weapon and pick it up,
Well, the best is like
first
when
of all,
Thor was like, Thor was like, I knew it. I knew it.
and it calls back to the moment. There's this brief moment in Avengers: Age of Ultron. It's one of the funniest because of how uncomfortable Thor looks. Is when they're all kind of having this little, it's kind of this member measuring contest, kind of where they're trying to pick up Thor's hammer, and Captain America goes and tries to pick it up and moves it just like half an inch. And Thor notices it and then shakes it off like I couldn't have seen that. But of course now, whenever he picks it up, he's like, "Oh, okay." So he was actually worthy. Yeah, it's pretty funny, and I love that they are able to fit all those kinds of moments in there. Spider-Man's insta kill mode it gets a great moment. Gets a great moment here, where he activates it, and then just in one medium shot, everybody around him is killed, and I love that. Whenever he and everybody comes back. I love that Pepper's able to get a little suit here and get into the action. That's really cool that they're able. Oh! Speaking of which, the girl power moment. The shot where all the women kind of surround Captain Marvel was freaking awesome. Whenever they're about to finally head down Thanos, and
Yeah,
it's
so
that long
that's
shot of everybody gathering.
yeah, that's a reference to A Force, which is the
Yeah.
all-female led Avengers in the comics. So maybe they'll do that in the future.
Maybe, yeah, hopefully so. Also, by the way, the thing that I didn't expect them to do is, well, one, use Captain Marvel so little, but whatever. Again, I'm with you. I kind of understand it because they got more movies. They wanted to focus on the original six, so that's fine. And maybe they give a little bit too much of a convenience of Captain Marvel coming in at the exact moment they need her. But
Right.
anyway, whatever. Is the fact that whenever she is actually finally coming down against Thanos and she's fighting him. I mean, he's surprised at her power, the fact that he's like punching her with his fist and not even really able to do anything. But then he uses the Power Stone, and then he knocks her backward. And I think that it was smart of them to basically say that it's kind of an even match between Captain Marvel and her powers and Thanos in the Infinity Gauntlet. So yes, I was wrong that he wasn't so much completely finished as I thought he was. It ultimately had to be Tony and actively using the Infinity Stones against Thanos that had to defeat him, not just bringing in Captain Marvel. That would have been an easy fix. And I like how they established that as powerful as she is, there's some powers that maybe she can't even quite match. She can almost match, but not quite. And I thought that was really well handled. So yeah, just so many small things here that I really like. The stuff that I be able to think of after we're done and regretting not mentioning here, but also well handled. Such a great, crazy plot, and yeah. So anyway, all right, folks, we're done. We're basically out of time. I got a movie in an hour and 15 minutes that I gotta make. I'm just being honest with you guys. So
Wow, Joel, keeping your priorities in line. Jeez. Just leaving the show midway through and you're like, all right, adios, bye. You're like, what?
But yes, we do you have anything else you need to say, or do we pretty much cover everything that
no.
is worth?
I will say that just to wrap this all up, besides Star Wars, maybe Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, this is one of those like true cinematic events that we won't get for a very long time. And I'm even talking about over episode 9 at the end of this year. This is one of those events that's going to be not touched for a while, and it was kind of great to experience it. It was great to start a podcast and get inspired after one of the movies to talk about movies. This thing has taken us on a journey, Joel, and it's been a heck of a ride.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right too. Just in terms of, Star Wars Episode 9 is obviously finishing off a major storyline. And this one's not finishing off every storyline, of course, but it's finishing off the storyline of at least like 11 of the 22 movies.
Right.
In terms of the characters that it finishes, that pretty much are done now. So, yeah, I mean, it's super, it's definitely emotional. It's not really like anything else I've seen, just in terms of the structure and how big it is and how much they do and all of that. It's a big movie. So certainly going to be the biggest. I think it's going to be the biggest grosser of the year. And yeah, it's going to be insane. So, all right, folks, until next week, again, it's going to be a little bit earlier in the week. I think Chase probably can agree. We're probably going to post the next episode maybe on Wednesday, something like that, Wednesday or Thursday.
I'll post it fairly quickly to give you guys more content. And I got like 3 movie reviews coming out next week, so there's going to be a bunch of stuff, and then we'll take a little bit of a breather and then come back with Detective Pikachu.
Yeah, which I'm unreasonably excited for. So,
right. So that will be our next like full review episode. It's been a pleasure, Joel. Let's keep on going. This is not the end game. There will be more because 2 more months from now we will have another one. But we'll see you guys for the next one.
I will just say a friend of mine posted, and he's an aspiring comedian. He's worked on comedy shows and stuff in New York. And he posted this season. He was like, I can't believe that Avengers Endgame is going to be the last MCU movie until we get Spider-Man Far From Home in July.
Until July, yeah. Which is true. But you know what? In the moment, as Joel stated last year with Infinity War, it's in the moment and it's still impactful and it leaves a pretty nice resonance of just good feeling. It's just a good feeling. So next week, I got 3 reviews coming at you guys: Red Joan, Ugly Dolls, The Intruder, and we will drop the summer movie preview. We'll see you guys next week for all that delicious content on Real Me and Colin Movie Podcast. I'm Chase. That is Joel. See you guys fairly soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.